God, we're grateful for this time that we can assemble here to do the work of this county. Lord, we call upon you now just to lead and guide us in the efforts that we do here tonight. Lord, may they be honorable unto you. Lord, and we ask your hand upon this nation. Lord, just undergird it. Lord, be with each and every one that needs your assistance tonight. Lord, and be with those who are serving our people. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Ask you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all. You may be seated. Roll call. Madam Vice Chair.
Here.
Mr. Shriver.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Speed.
Here.
Mr. Bunn.
Here.
Mr. Ford.
Here.
All right. Everybody's present. Item number 1 on our agenda is our consent agenda. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Mr. Bunn.
Second.
Second by Mr. Shriver. Madam Vice Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Shriver.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Speed.
Yes.
Mr. Bunn.
Yes.
Mr. Ford.
Yes.
The yeses have it, and it is so ordered. Item 2 on the agenda is comments from the public. This is a time set aside by the Board of Commissioners to allow individuals to address the board on issues concerning the county. I believe we have 3 persons who have signed up for comments, and as I call your names, we're going to ask that those persons would address the board to give us your name and your address, and then you have 5 minutes to give us your comments. First person I have is Curtis Wall.
Here, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. I just want to bring it to the county's attention, just something I've noticed over the last couple agendas and minutes. It has to do with the closed sessions that are happening. I'm just going to go ahead and read the statute just as a bit of a reminder. Basically, that when county commissioners decide to enter into a closed session for these meetings, that they are legally required to disclose the reason for doing so. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, subsection A, subsection 3, general policy matters may not be discussed in a closed session, and nothing herein shall be construed to permit a public body to close a meeting that otherwise would be open merely because an attorney employed or retained by the public body is a participant. Public body may consider and give instructions to an attorney concerning the handling of settlement claim, judicial action, mediation, arbitration, or administrative procedures. It goes on to say, also in claiming this subsection, a motion based on a subdivision of this section shall identify the parties in each existing lawsuit concerning which the public body expects to receive advice during the closed session. One thing I've noticed over the last several sessions and minutes is that none of the lawsuits seem to be named, if that's what's being discussed. And also, just as a sub fact, that there have not been any closed session minutes posted to the website. I'm not sure if it's a technical issue or not, but the last one posted is from March of 2013. Again, I just more or less just wanted to bring this to the county's attention, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Can we get Mr. Wall's address for the record, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, yes. My name is Curtis Wall, CURTISWALL, and my address is 70 Wickersham Way in Lewisburg.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next comments from Frank Winstead. Mr. Winstead, if you could give us your name and your address, please.
Hello, this is Frank Winstead, 145 Victoria Court, Youngsville, North Carolina, 27596-7739-45. Watching the August 3rd Board of Commissioners meeting was highly entertaining, and tonight the commissioners may vote on rezoning near Old Liberty. At the last meeting, the public actually talked to their elected commissioners, and the commissioners were at least virtually present. One downside to remote meetings, you can't really tell if a commissioner is listening or maybe just muting public comments. The original problem was not really between Old Liberty neighbors and a nearby developer. The actual conflict exists between everybody in the way their elected officials constantly change the Unified Development Ordinance, regardless of what is in the 10-year ceremonial comprehensive development plan, which they just approved a few weeks ago. The way the commissioners have designed and used the UDO to accomplish the goals of the comp plan is the root of the problem. Hardly anybody wants a convenience store next to Old Liberty, but the text amendment before the commissioners establishes that opportunity, presumably for at least 10 years as a matter of right to whoever owns that property. Matter of right meaning very limited public opportunity to have their complaints heard. This is very similar to the property assessment and tax racket used by the county. The public's opportunity to complain passes long before the public knows they need to complain. Maybe the courts will eventually clean up this county mess, which should not be confused with the other county mess regarding Old Liberty and residential drinking water, which is already in the courts. But back to the rezoning problem, which could have been mostly solved without exposing the commissioners to lengthy public comments. Well, except now it sounds like the proposed storage facility is actually more like a parking lot for recreational vehicles. So those who were scared of homeless people having another storage facility in the area to live out of can rest easier knowing that any new homeless neighbors will at least have to be able to afford an RV. Then the question becomes, what kind of lighting will that parking lot have? Maybe a big stadium-style light, which could illuminate many of the nearby houses. The simplest solution, if the developers and the neighbors could come to terms, they could file a land restriction agreement with the County Register of Deeds, and there would not be much left to complain to the commissioners about. Then the commissioners could rubber stamp the text amendment without worrying too much about another lawsuit. Speaking of the Franklin County Register of Deeds, 12 fewer death certificates have been issued in Franklin County thus far in 2020 as compared to the same time period in 2019. Wake County is also down by 49 death certificates. Have a better night, y'all. Bye-bye.
Scott Strickland, I'm sorry. Scott
I'm-
Strickland,
You hear me now?
yes.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm just wondering why it's taking.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes,
give
sir.
your address, please.
Yeah, Scott Strickland, 40 Sheila's Lane, Lewisburg, North Carolina, 27549.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering why it's taking so long to test these Viper radios when it was 2 months ago before COVID hit that they were told to test these radios, and now we go by in closed session and come out and say to test these radios in the paper. I just can't believe we're dragging our feet this long when our safety out here is got fire departments can't get patched through, and we keep dragging our feet. I just hope we bring this thing to a resolution very soon because it people's lives are dependent on it. And the second thing I got is here where school has started and we still ain't got no response yet from broadband. I mean, I hope that we give this money to them and get this thing up and rolling because our kids depend on this. I mean, you just don't realize how dependent it is because people in that other end of the county don't have anything. But anyway, that's all I got. Thank y'all for all you do. Thank you, Mark and Shelley, for what y'all do, and have a good night.
Thank you, sir. Item number 3 on the agenda is rezoning request. On August 3rd, 2020, the board conducted a public hearing regarding a rezoning request by Summit Design and Engineering Services. They request to rezone 4.57 acres at 6814 North Carolina 96 Highway West in Youngsville Township from residential 40 R40 to neighborhood business NB. Comments received within 24 hours following the hearing were shared with commissioners via mail included in this agenda package and will be made a part of the official record. What is the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this request.
Second.
Is that approved? Did you say approved?
Mr. Chairman, before you take a vote, I think Scott Hammerbacher would like to make a few comments because we actually need to take a vote on two motions, as I understand it, if Scott is available.
I am.
Okay.
And Coy, if you could bring up or allow me to share my screen.
You can.
Thank you. Okay, so just going over real quick, the outlined area in the purple is the areas to be rezoned. The yellow is the R40. The tan or brownish area is existing neighborhood business, and that's what they're requesting. Going back towards this, we are required by law to adopt a zoning consistency statement. I've prepared two. This one basically is in favor, corresponding with the motion on the table. I'll read it real quickly into the record. Future land use plan indicates that this property is intended for agricultural residential uses. However, the property is located along a major thoroughfare where there are existing neighborhood business zone parcels. Public water is available to the site. Neighborhood business zoning standards are designated protected adjacent residential zone parcels from undesirable aspects of commercial zoning. Neighborhood business allows many storage facilities as a use by right. The request is reasonable with existing land uses and is in the public interest.
And were you asking us to adapt the statement?
Yes, that would need to be included as part of a motion to approve. You need to, since 2005, I believe it's been a requirement of the state that we provide basically a statement of why we're approving or denying a rezoning request.
Scott, were there two you were going to share with us or just this one?
Sure, I have one is corresponding with the motion on the table. Basically, the second one I can read. The future land use plan indicates that this property is intended for agricultural residential uses. Public water, I'm sorry, I can't move my screen here so I can see it all the way. Public water in Old Liberty subdivision are adjacent to this site. Old Liberty consisting of 619 approved lots. The subject property is within 2 miles of the nearest commercial node. Commercial nodes will serve as a commercial focus area. In an effort to avoid strip commercialization, commercial land uses have been provided in nodes located at the intersection of thoroughfares. This property is located along a major thoroughfare where there are existing neighborhood business zone parcels. However, the property is best suited for low density development due to traffic concerns and possible negative impacts to adjoining property owners.
Okay, Scott, now, what are you asking us to, is the first one just a general statement that we adopting, or is that?
The first one would be in support of approving the rezoning request.
Okay, and the second one?
If we had a motion to deny the request.
Okay.
So you're asking us to vote on both of them?
No, I'm asking you to include one of them as part of your motion to either, if you want to, the board wishes to approve this evening, the rezoning request, I would ask that you include the one that's on your screen now. If there's one to deny, then I would ask you to use the second zoning consistency statement.
I made a motion to approve the request. What else do you want?
So I'll make a motion to that to add this zoning consistency statement to the motion.
Second.
Okay. Did someone second Mr. Foy's motion?
Second that too.
Yeah, I did as well.
Okay. So the motion's been made by Mr. Ford, second by Mr. Bunn. Are there any other questions? Other questions? Madam Vice Chair,
No.
Mr. Shriver,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
No.
Mr. Speed. Mr. Speed,
No.
Mr. Bunn,
Yes.
Mr. Ford.
Yes.
No from the chair. The noes have it, and it is so ordered. You need anything else, Scott?
No, that'll do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just being sure I follow, if we go no, then do we need to adopt that other statement? Does Scott need us to make a motion to adopt the second one denying it? Or was that part of what we did in the beginning?
Scott, you can clear that up for us. As I understood, that was part of the beginning.
Then my understanding is we would have to basically state a reason within our motion to deny. We have to state why we denied it. So yes, we by default we would have to adopt that. Pete, can you weigh in on this?
I'll agree with you, Scott. But that can be by reference to the statement since you have already read it.
Okay. So no further action is needed then.
I don't think so, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Item number 4 on our agenda is COVID-19 update. Health Director Scott Levine will provide an update on the pandemic.
Hello. Glad to be back, and very sorry I missed the last meeting. Well, I've got some good news to report for once, it seems in quite a long time across the rest of the state. North Carolina recorded only 564 new cases today. That's impressive because each and every day since June 24th, we've been over 1,000 new lab confirmed cases each day. That stopped on August 10th when we saw only 626, and today when we saw 564. I'm not really jumping for joy yet because these declines also coincide with some significant decreases in the number of overall tests completed. But even with those significant decreases in tests and some LabCorp reporting errors that reduce the total number of tests substantially, we're coming in at only a 7% positivity ratio. So that means of all the tests that we're doing, it's now fluctuating between 6 to 8%, and today it was 7. So that's good news. Hospitalizations were at 980, and it's not been below 1,000 until August 15th. And that was from July 9th to August 15th. It was over at 1,000 or higher. And so that is good news to see those numbers coming down. In Franklin County, I'm very sad to report that we have, in a little less than a month, we have doubled the number of cases that we've had to date in this pandemic. We now rest at 932 lab confirmed positive cases. And we are up 170 more cases than the last report that I provided to the board. Even though our line is flattening, it's flattening at a high rate, and that's concerning. So we are continuing to watch that. We are continuing to urge everyone to wear a face covering, wash your hands, and stand 6 feet away from others that don't live in your house. And we're re-emphasizing the importance of doing all three. Those are not standalone items. It's face covering and distance and washing your hands, not one or the other. So that's important. I will provide a Franklin County specific report when I send you the written copy of this. It's a snapshot of where we are as of today. And it shows the age distributions. We're still seeing too high of a percentage of people under the age of 17 that are testing positive. It's been right around 14%. Today it came in at 13%. That is concerning as schools beginning. So we are watching those numbers very, very closely. Moving on to the state, I'm sorry, one more item to report for Franklin County. Deaths. Unfortunately, we have now risen to 28 deaths. We have 6 that were community-based, 20 that were tied to the Lewisburg Nursing Center outbreak, 1 that was tied to an outbreak at Franklin Oaks Skilled Nursing Facility, and 1 that was tied to an outbreak at Southern Living Assisted Living. So that additional death that we just saw today was a community-based death, and that person was 64. So, you know, we are watching that. We anticipate that that number may go up in the coming weeks, and so we're hopeful that it won't. Obviously, we have remained in phase 2 and will continue to do so for a while, according to Governor Cooper's phased in reopening of North Carolina. Let's see, our contact tracer workforce, Franklin County, we are consistently testing well over 100 residents each day, and we have done so for 9 of the last 14 days. And that's our target metric as a county, not just for the county health department, or for all county residents. We're testing over 100 on 9 of the last 14 days. So that is very encouraging. Unfortunately, our positivity ratio has been much higher than the state average. And while the state is at 7% today, we're at 8%, which is actually an improvement for us. So we're going to continue to watch that. We have now signed on and are starting to use state supplied contact tracers and the contact tracing tool. That's an online tool that the state has provided. Let's see, we continue to provide advice to area businesses, and we've gotten a lot of requests lately for businesses and events to review their plans. I'm pleased to say that there are some companies doing some phenomenal work to make sure they reopen in a safe way. You know, I don't like to name individuals, but I can tell you a couple that one that leaps to the fore is the good folks at Panic Point. They have done a phenomenal job of developing a plan for how they can reopen in a safer way. And I didn't think that was possible. I was quite skeptical, read their plan, went out and did a site review, had a couple of suggestions. They updated their plan, and they've done a phenomenal job out there. So really looking forward to seeing good stuff from them. Received a lot of requests from nonprofits looking to do fundraising. And actually today just got one for a car show or a car auction that's scheduled for this weekend, because somebody had called in. I hadn't heard that they were doing it, contacted them, and within 2 or 3 hours, we had a plan. They already had a plan, shared it with me. I've notified the sheriff, 911, and our local folks here at the Joint Information Center, so that if anybody calls in, everybody knows about it. I've approved their plan, and we're all on the same page. So they've done a really good job with that. In terms of congregate care facilities, we continue to see 1 outbreak currently showing in Franklin County, and that is at Southern Living Assisted Living. They have a total of 16 cases. 2 are staff and 14 are residents, and they did have one death. Franklin Oaks Nursing and Rehabilitation Center, they have not reported any new additional cases, and they have or will soon come off of the list of outbreaks. In terms of clusters in the county, and then again, that's defined as 5 or more cases at a business or an organization. We can't identify what all of those are. There are some clusters where we are required to identify. Those are daycares and schools. Other clusters we're not allowed to release information on. So we have had a cluster that finished at a business. They did a good job of addressing it. 1 daycare center just finished with their cluster, but we have had reports of other cases at other daycare centers, but they have been very aggressive at jumping on the guidance and the recommendations and done a really good job of containing it. And there are a couple have done a really phenomenal job, so I can't say enough good things about them. And we should have our migrant camp and 1 farm that should come off the cluster list this week. We've had, well, on the good news also, we have received as a county health department an additional $162,000 in funding for our COVID-19 efforts, and we're going to use that money to expand our contact tracing, testing, and reporting capacity. Right now, we have more than enough testing capacity to meet the demand that's currently there. We anticipate the demand will increase once school gets in session for a lot of places, and we're going to have more to share about that. Lewisburg College is reopening, and after we had initial meetings between the health department, college officials, and Mariah Parham Franklin, the college implemented their planned in-person reopening. Students have been returning to campus in stages with screening and testing of students prior to their return, and they've developed a response plan in the event that they have a student that tests positive, and they have a testing provider arranged for the students. We have been working with them extensively as a health department with the college to reopen our on-campus clinic that the health department provides on the campus for their students in order to ensure that the staff that we provide there and the students are able to receive those clinic services safely. And we are scheduled to reopen that clinic on August 20th, this Thursday, when classes formally begin. So they've done a really good job of keeping us in the loop, and we're glad to be able to reopen that clinic on campus as we've done for a number of years for them. As everyone knows, for schools, the governor announced that Plan B would be the choice for the state, but that some districts could adopt Plan C if they chose to. The Franklin County and Plan C, for those playing along at home, is all remote learning option. Plan B is a hybrid that requires reduced numbers of students in classrooms. And so for the Franklin County School District, based on their footprint, facility-wise, and the numbers and the county data, the health department supported the school district selecting initially to open under Plan C, which is the remote learning option. We're continuing to model and monitor the data and provide guidance to the eventual face-to-face learning options when the data supports such a move. Both charter schools, because of bigger footprints and lower census, were able to open in a Plan B mode. Youngsville Academy opened on August 5th, and Cross Creek Charter School opened today in their brand new building, which we were able to inspect at the health department on Friday, just under the wire. So a beautiful facility. Some of the parents in some of the schools have selected to go remote, but a lot of them haven't. There have been a few hiccups along the way, and we're negotiating and working through those with the schools, interpreting guidance that seems to change quite frequently. So the last item I have is our drive-through testing for uninsured and underinsured, primarily individuals in Franklin County. Prior to last week, we had, and really since June 2nd when we started, we've seen increasing and steadily increasing demand for that drive-through testing capacity. Last week, the week before, we saw over 60 people where we were testing a little over 30 each day on Tuesdays and Thursdays, twice a week. And then last week on Thursday, we only had 3 people that were scheduled, and only 2 of them came in for testing. This seems to be mirroring a statewide and a nationwide decrease in people seeking testing. I can assure everyone that we have the capacity to test more people, and I hope that more people avail themselves of that opportunity. We are watching some of the changes in some of the testing that's available. We're looking forward to, hopefully, when approved, of the saliva test. That could be very helpful. Right now, we're continuing to use the nasal swab, the nasal pharyngeal swab, and we are still offering it twice a week and are looking to expand when the demand increases to Franklinton as well. Are there any questions?
I have 2 actually, Scott.
Yep.
So the first one you mentioned about children or young people under 17 years of age and younger being about 14%. Are we seeing any hospitalization numbers on those or any deaths related to that age group?
We have not seen a death in that age group in Franklin County, and the span of the ages, we've had some that have been 4 months old, that have tested positive right up until that 17 age. So it's pretty across the board. We've had no hospitalizations that I'm aware of and no deaths, which is consistent with what the rest of the data shows across the state. There is that multi-system disorder that they've talked about. We have instances of that in the state, but we have not seen that in Franklin County yet, and I hope we don't.
Right, sure. And you mentioned the swab. I just heard about that today on the news, that there's a swab that can give a result back in like 3 hours.
Yeah, and that's
something.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you if that's something we're going to be able to get here in Franklin County, maybe with some of that money you're receiving.
Yeah, we're definitely looking for that. Part of the money comes in areas that you can apply it to, and increased capacity for testing is one. And clearly, having a 3-hour turnaround time beats the living daylights out of even the 26 hours that we're currently getting from one of our labs, and it clearly beats the 7 days that we've gotten from another of our labs. So. Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to that. I really hope it gets approved quickly and we get it out, and that it's shown to be effective.
Thank you, Scott.
I have one question. Scott, 60 tested on Tuesday and Thursday. What percentage can you tell us was positive?
I don't have those numbers in front of me. Roughly, I can say of the 30, we're coming in around anywhere from 9 to 13 on a given day are positive. For that drive-through. So the percentage of the drive-through testing that's positive is higher than our overall county percentage. I can't do the math without a calculator, but 9 out of, our 9 or 13 out of 30 is a pretty significant number. It's well over 10%, that's for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Levine. Thank you for the job that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. Item 5 on our agenda is the utility allocations. The Utility Advisory Committee met on August 12th, 2020, and discussed and voted on the following items. And Chris Doherty will make that report, and you'll be asked to individually vote on each one of the items that are presented. But before Chris comes, I'd like to just make a statement, if I may. That is to remind you that, first of all, I want everyone to know that we appreciate the patience and willingness to work with our county management and our staff that customers, towns, and the development community have exhibited through a series of events that has brought us to the present time. In early March, confirmed cases of the coronavirus began to increase in our nation, and stories of the virus's devastating effects in other states and countries necessitated an appropriate and cautionary and immediate response by our local government. You may recall that at the Utilities Advisory Committee meeting that was held on March the 4th, from the time that the March UAC meeting was conducted until March 16th, the Board of Commissioners meeting occurred, and a number of actions were set in motion to address our county's public safety and the health of our citizens. And quite frankly, those actions at that time were a priority for our local government, and the governor's executive order declaring a state of emergency in North Carolina regarding the coronavirus outbreak was issued on March the 10th. And guidance from the UNC School of Government was being issued daily during that time on numerous and timely topics affecting many aspects of local government. And we responded to the information by reviewing and determining how to apply the new guidelines to issues as basic as how many people could safely be in a meeting space. And the results was that the March 16th Franklin County Board of at the March 16th Franklin County Board of Commissioners meeting was revised to include only the most essential actions needed to ensure the health and safety of county residents, including issuing a declaration of a state of emergency for Franklin County as a board action, And the intention at that time in March was to reschedule any agenda items as soon as the upcoming commissioners meetings could be conducted safely and per the statutory guidance being issued for the types of agenda items needed. But in the midst of these pandemic issues, the issues before the Utilities Advisory Committee intersected with the county's water supply study that was progressing along despite other challenges. You may recall that in November of 2019, Franklin County had entered into an agreement with an engineering firm to conduct a water supply study with the ultimate goal of identifying and recommending an appropriate investment in immediate short-term and long-term water solutions for the county. The intersection of issues related to UAC topics and the water supply study required additional review and verification of information before items could be passed along to the Board of Commissioners. Evidence of the results of the water supply study efforts include an agreement with the city of Raleigh for emergency water supply and an amendment with the town of Lewisburg for additional water to be made available. Discussion with other entities are ongoing now, and we anticipate additional progress and updates in the very near future concerning resources that illustrate and confirm Franklin County's commitment to growth and economic development in our county. The county communicated in late June its intention to schedule a UAC meeting as soon as all of the relevant information had been gathered, and which was then hopefully within 45 days. And I want to again to confirm the county's commitment to accuracy and timeliness in the ongoing provisions of water allocations here in the county. And so with that being said, I would ask that Chris Doherty would come now and give us a report on the August 12th UAC meeting.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman. I will be sharing my screen. I got a PowerPoint to go through with you. As I'm doing that, I'll go through just to let you know that each of the recommendations that I'm going to be going over with you tonight will need a separate motion and vote for each one. I will be timely on everything, but just to let you know, all these are from the recommendations from the August 12th, 2020 UAC meeting. The department received 109,890 gallons per day worth of allocation requests, and we only have 58,600 gallons per day to allocate out. So we went through that and came up with the recommendations that we're going to present to you tonight. Item 5A is for Ashbury Village, Phase 1C and 2. 37 lots. It's going to complete that subdivision once it's all built out. Their request was for 4,995 gallons per day of water, 9,250 gallons per day of sewer. This will, as I said, complete the build out of a 104 lot subdivision. It was the UAC's approval to recommendation to approve this request. I need a motion in a second. Excuse me.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Shriver made a motion to approve.
Second.
Did someone make a motion to make a second?
I did, David.
Mr. Bunn made a second. Are there any other questions? No other questions. We will have a roll call vote. Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Bunn?
Yes.
Mr. Ford? Mr. Ford? Mr. Ford, is he still with us?
He needs to unmute.
Mr. Foy?
Yeah, yes.
All right, chair votes yes. Yes, so the yes is having it is so ordered.
Thank you. Item 5B is allocation for Phase 2 of Gill Farm Plantation for 50 lots. Phase 1 was recorded July 30th, 2019. When this total subdivision will be 161 lot subdivision once built out. Phase 1 does meet the 30% requirement. This was voted unanimously by the UAC on August the 12th. It is staff's recommendation to approve this request.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Dixon, second by Mr. Shriver, I believe.
Correct.
Any questions? No questions? Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Bunn?
Yes.
Mr. Foy?
Yes.
Yes, it's happened, and it is so ordered.
Thank you. Item 5C is allocation for Sutherland Station. This is for 37 lots for Phase 1. It is within it's another phase within the Old Liberty subdivision. The UAC unanimously approved this request at the August 12th meeting. This section of the subdivision will be off of Pocomoke Road.
Pleasure of the board.
Move to approve.
Mr. Shriver move to approve. Mr. Speed, second.
Second.
Any questions? No questions? Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Bunn?
Yes.
Mr. Foy?
Yes.
Yes, it's happening, so ordered.
Item 5D is for Patterson Woods Phase 7. This is for 23 lots. Phase 6 was recorded in October 19th of 2018. This was unanimously approved at the August 12th UAC meeting. Look for a motion to approve.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Shriver move. Who second?
I did.
Mr. Speed, is that you?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Any other questions? Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Bunn?
Yes.
Mr. Foy?
Yes.
Yes, it's happened, and it is so ordered.
Item 5E is for Whispering Pines Subdivision Phase 2. This is for 50 lots in a larger 398 lot subdivision. Phase 1 was recorded on June 6th of 2019. The Utility Advisory Committee voted unanimously to approve.
For special board,
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Shriver made a motion.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. Are there any questions? No questions. Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Bunn?
Yes.
Mr. Foy?
Yes.
Yes, it's happening, so ordered.
Item 5F is allocation for Essex Place Phase 3. This is for the remaining 6 lots of their first subdivision of an 87 lots. Phase 2 was recorded on November 13th, 2019. The Utility Advisory Committee unanimously approved this on August the 12th.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Move for approval.
Second.
Jones made a motion.
Mr.
Shriver-
Jones.
Mr. Shriver, second. Any
Correct.
questions? Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Bunn?
Yes.
Mr. Foy?
Yes.
Yes, it's happening, so ordered.
Item 5G is a new request for Essex Village for 50 lots for phase one. The Utilities Advisory Committee voted unanimously to approve this at the August 12th meeting.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Move for approval.
Second.
Who's made a motion? Mr. Shriver, second. Any questions? No questions, Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Bunn?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Yes, it's happening. It's ordered.
Item 5H is Cedar Crossing phases 4 and 5. This is for 50 lots in total of a 233 lot subdivision. This will build out the subdivision. Phases 6 and 7 were recorded December the 12th of 2019, and they do have their 30% mark. This was unanimously approved at the Utility Advisory Committee.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve.
Mr. Shriver made the motion. Someone second?
Second.
Mr. Speed, second. Are there any questions? Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Bunn?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Yes, it's happening. So ordered.
Item 5A is a allocation request for an apartment complex, multifamily apartment complex on South College in Youngsville. This is for half of the project of 72 units of phase one. This allocation will be taken out of the economic development bucket. The Utility Advisory Committee voted unanimously for this request to approve on August the 12th, 2020.
Mr. Doherty, did I understand you say 5A?
5I, I'm sorry, I.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve, sir.
Mr. Shriver made
Second.
the motion. Mr. Speed, second. Are there any questions? No questions, Madam Vice Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Bunn?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Yes, it's happening. It's on.
Item 5J is an allocation request for Hampton Village Phase 3. It's for 48 units. This will complete the Hampton Village multifamily complex in Youngsville. This will be taken out of the economic development bucket. The Utility Advisory Committee voted unanimously to approve this project at the August 12th meeting.
Pleasure of the board.
Move to approve.
Who made the motion?
Mr. Shriver.
Mr. Shriver.
Second.
Second by Mr. Speed. Any questions? Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Bunn?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Yes, it's happening. It's ordered.
All right, that's all of the allocations. Now we're going to two allocation extensions for Hadley subdivision. This is the first one. They originally got approval for the 76 lots. They're looking to ask for an extension to March 31st, 2021, which is within the ordinance requirements. The reason for the extension is after the walkthrough, there were a lot of items based on the punch list that were added based upon the walkthrough conducted by Franklin County Public Utilities. The UAC voted unanimously on the 12th to approve this request.
What's the pleasure, board?
Move to approve.
Move to approve, Mr. Shriver.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. Are there any questions? No questions. Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Bunn?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Yes, it's happening and it is so ordered.
The last extension item is for Hillcrest subdivision for 50 lots. They are requesting to extend their current allocation, which is set to expire March 31st, 2021. Looking to go to March 21st, 2022. The reason why so long out is the The subdivision developers just changed the engineer record. So they're going to redo some grading design. So they need some additional time to be able to set the new grade, to be able to set the sewer and stormwater at a relatively normal depth. The UAC voted unanimously to approve this request at the August 12th meeting.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Move to approve. Motion by Mr. Shriver, second by Mr. Bunn, I believe.
Yes.
Are there any questions? Madam Vice Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Shriver,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Speed,
Yes.
Mr. Bunn,
Yes.
Mr. Ford.
Yes.
Yes, it's having its order.
Okay, after all of the requests tonight and the extensions that that were approved, this leaves a balance of 17,695 gallons per day for the remainder of calendar year to be able to allocate out. Staff is looking at a late September or early October for another UAC meeting. And at the UAC meeting, we set a deadline for applications for new submittals to be turned into my office by September 19th at 5 p.m. I stand by to answer any questions that anybody may have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Any questions for Mr. Doherty?
I have one. Chris,
Yes, sir.
in light of these extensions, I forgot, is there anything in the policies that will offer penalties for folks that continue to have extension requests?
Well, they get an extension. If they fail to meet this next one, they will lose their allocation.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Do we need to approve the amendment to the UDO that the UAC committee had looked at, reviewed, and gave blessing to?
There was, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
regarding the allocation ordinance, we just asked if the Utility Advisory Committee would support staff looking into changing and making amendments to the allocation ordinance based on the additional water we received from Raleigh and the town of Lewisburg. And it was favorably agreed upon that we would look into it, but there was no action taken at the UAC nor any amendments to the ordinance at this time.
Very good. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Doherty.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Item 6 on the agenda is a resolution supporting expansion of broadband services. The board is asked to consider approving a resolution that supports the appropriation of additional funds from federal and state sources to expand broadband. Support changes in North Carolina general statutes that would allow county governments to seek funding and qualify for grant monies that allow investment in infrastructure that qualified providers can use to expand broadband service, and supports efforts to obtain service area information from existing broadband providers within the county to ensure that unserved customer areas are appropriately provisioned. What's your pleasure?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. I remember I brought this up at our last meeting, and I'm in support of this resolution of getting more money to go towards this, but I kind of wonder about what we have right now and what our benchmarks are or milestones on what we're supposed to be getting of this 3 years of service with our existing setup with this company. Because I know if we throw more money at it, I want to see more on the benchmark or expectations of people getting. I just want to make sure we're realizing a difference by putting more money into it, which I favor, but I want to see some results or more bang for our buck. Because I wasn't very impressed either with just 100 new services a year with the existing contract that we have. I don't mind spending more on it, but I want to make sure we go more places with it and show it.
Ms. Denton?
I mean, what I guess it takes me to my root of question.
I'll be
What
glad
is
to-
our current contract? What are we supposed to be at each year with hopefully more than just 100 households per year?
So I'll be glad to comment about that. The agreement that we signed with Open Broadband was an opportunity to provide grant funding to them. We have only given the first grant fund, so to speak, if that's the appropriate term, for the beginning of the process. And because this was a whole process that was done regionally with Vance County and Granville County, our agreement stretches out over 7 years, but actually 4 years of implementing broadband service in different areas in the county. And so I think the pandemic has obviously illustrated how quickly this demand has escalated. And that's some of the purpose of this resolution, to show that we support, the board supports, and this board has been very proactive. The process that we went through with the RFP, joining regionally, working through the COG, was very proactive for Franklin County. And we've made progress there. But again, the pandemic is upon us and has really illustrated the need for this, kind of parallel to electricity and telephone service. And so that's why resolutions, and we are continuing, same questions that were asked last time, we've continued to look into that. We are hoping and anticipating that, again, state and federal sources will become more available so that we can do more funding. But at this point, Franklin County, our contract with Open Broadband is very specific. Additional funding is not made available through approval from the board until certain benchmarks are met. And so only the first payment has been distributed, and Open Broadband is continuing to work. I have been in communication with them since the last meeting. They have they've continued to work. Their equipment is available. They have, per my discussion with them on Friday, equipment at Owens Park is scheduled for installation this week. I know that they've worked with Christie to work on getting equipment installed on the towers. So progress is being made, but it is painfully slow. I think everyone recognizes that.
I'd like to add there to Commissioner Foy's thing. So I guess, I mean, what you shared, Ms. Denton, is great, but is there a number? I mean, is there a number that holds these people to delivering service? Are they going to deliver 1,000 new clients or access to 1,000 people that is tangible in a 12-month period of time, or 100? Did we stipulate anything like that in the performance of this agreement?
We can go back and look specifically. I don't want to answer that without looking back very specifically, because some of that was contingent, just like the situation we're in now, on the demand of the customers. Franklin County has over 1,000 folks that have signed up for service. The other counties aren't quite approaching that number. And so adjusting to the demand from customers is another piece of this puzzle. We just have to kind of work our way through it. I'm just looking forward to getting the first handful of customers turned up, and then I think customer demand in the environment we're in will help. And we've also put, of course, the information about the resources that they need for employment. We've made our economic development folks aware of that. They're helping to promote that so that we can get boots on the ground and help with this effort.
Chairman,
I just have one more question. Well, go ahead.
Mr. Jones?
just a comment. I want to thank Kim for the update that she gave us last week, and please continue to do that. It helps me out a lot, know what's going on. So the updates are important. Please continue sending them to us. Thank you.
Mr. Foy?
Yeah, just one time. I just thought for Miss Denton there, she could keep us apprised of, some numbers in here. As we get state and federal funds to put on top of what we've already done, some numbers that we can look at increasing as we go along. I don't want to just say I support this wholeheartedly, but if we put more bucks into it, we see some more recipients of the service.
I agree.
Anyway, okay.
Yes, I certainly agree. That's the great grant opportunities, the other things that we are, that we're looking forward to. And this resolution would be a great show of support, a continuing show of support from this board, uniformity in communicating with legislators and others to say Franklin County supports anything that can be done. We are very much like almost every other county in the state of North Carolina, and really a huge number of counties across the United States. We're all in the same boat in this regard.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Pleasure, the board.
Move for approval.
Move for approval.
Mr.
Second.
Jones made the motion, Mr. Shriver, Mr. Speed, I believe, second. Is that correct? All right, any questions? Other questions? Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Bunn?
Yes.
Mr. Foy?
Yes.
Yes is having so ordered. All right. Item 7 on our agenda is other business. Any other business? No other business. Item 8, board manager and clerk comments. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chairman, I have no comments at this time.
All right. Madam Vice Chair?
No comments.
Mr. Foy?
No comment.
Mr. Bunn?
No comment.
Mr. Speed?
No comment.
Mr. Jones?
No comment.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do have, would like to take just a moment. I'm a little disappointed in our board's decision tonight not to support this rezoning request by the Mitchells. I heard very clearly what the folks in Old Liberty shared, and their concern was a convenience store. I don't really know where the word convenience store came from or how it propagated into their dialogue, but that's clearly not the case here. I struggle with that decision when directly across the street, currently it's zoned and currently being used for this very purpose. I also struggle with the fact that the Mitchells are a generational family that have owned that land and the lands thereabouts and the lands of probably most, if not a good portion of currently what is Old Liberty today. The home that sits on this piece of land was original home built by one of the Mitchells in the 50s. I'm sure he enjoyed his backyard in the time that Mr. Mitchell was living. Miss Mitchell is still living and in good health. I'm sure they enjoyed their backyards and the privacy they had that is now rooftops behind them. But they didn't come before this board and complain. Matter of fact, to the best of my knowledge and understanding, a good majority of what would be the western entrance of Old Liberty has encroached upon the Mitchells' property since its beginning of time, which has been at least 15 years, if not more. And the Mitchells had worked diligently with the developers to cease and desist or to just reasonably buy the land they encroached upon. None of that took place. So when this community comes forward and takes issue with a landowner that's generationally owned land and unfortunately been shared a false truth, which was there is no intention, nor has there ever been an intention for a community convenience store to be placed on this property, but merely to make a gravel parking lot for some type of residual income for this family. It's disappointing that a false truth can lead to this amount of confusion and fear, and that we do not as a board support a landowner when directly across the street, this board and whoever it was at the time gave the property owner directly across the street that same liberty and freedom to use their land as they so saw fit. So I would hope that the Mitchells would reach back out to this community. If they're watching tonight, I hope that they would possibly find the opportunity to share through some form of communication their intentions and clarify these uncertainties and these false truths regarding a convenience store. and that this community will embrace them in the same way that their families, prior generations, embraced this community 30, 40 years ago in its inception. You know, it's one of these places where I feel like we need to be neighbors and work together. This isn't a factory or some atrocity being placed on this property. And I understand everybody wants their tranquility, but at the same regard, their tranquility can't encroach upon the property rights of others, in my opinion. So thank you for yielding the time, Mr. Chairman, and I have no further business.
Thank you, Mr. Shriver. I certainly would hope that I don't personally know the Mitchells. Obviously, you do. And of course, you put your conviction on that, but so did I, based upon what was presented to us. I don't know about the false information that went out. I don't know how it got out to be false, if you will. And I certainly don't know about encroachment on the Mitchell's property if the developer has not paid for that property. I trust that at some point that if the residents of Old Liberty and the Mitchells can get together, that maybe that they may be able to work something out.
Hopefully.
Certainly don't want you to suggest that the decision that was made or the vote that I gave in a way was based on anything other than what was presented to us at the public hearing. All right. Any other comments? If not, we'll move to item number 9, closed session. Board is asked to conduct a closed session pursuant to the following North Carolina General Statute. That general statute is 143-318.11A3, which is attorney-client privilege communication. What's the pleasure of the board?
So move.
Mr. Bunn, did you move?
I did.
All right. Who seconded?
Second.
Mr. Speed, Madam Vice Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Shriver,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Speed,
Yes.
Mr. Bunn,
Yes.
Mr. Ford.
No.
Yeses have it, and so ordered. We will see you in closed session. McCoy. Okay.
Hello?
Hello?
Entertain a motion to go into open session.
So moved.
Mr. Jones. Get a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Shriver. Madam Vice Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Foy,
Yes.
Mr. Shriver. Mr. Shriver, Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Speed,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes.
All right, there's no issues taken care of in closed session. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Shriver, Mr. Jones, Mr. Somebody.
Amen.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Any opposition, say no. Ayes have it, so ordered. Y'all have a good night. Good to see you.
Night.
All right, take
Thank you.
care.
Good night.
Stay safe.
Take care.